Good morning or afternoon or evening failure, a word that strikes fear in the hearts of many, a word most people try to avoid, hide from, or pretend never existed. And yet, failure, when rightly understood, the most powerful fuel a person can use to ignite success. There is no achievement without adversity. There is no elevation without opposition. There is no triumph without trial. Failure is not the end. It is a beginning in disguise. Let me tell you something eternal. Every failure contains within it the seed of an equal or greater benefit, but only for the one who looks for it. Most people see failure as a stop sign, but the wise, the courageous, the determined, they see failure as a signal. A signal that something must change. A signal that they are learning, growing, stretching toward a higher version of themselves. You were never meant to succeed on the first attempt at greatness. You were meant to become something in the process of trying. Failure is feedback, not final. When a baby tries to walk, falls down hundreds of times, but no one says, maybe walking isn't for them. We encourage them. We cheer them on. Why? Because we understand that falling is part of learning. Then why, as adults, do we treat failure as a verdict? Why do we let it define us, stop us, or discourage us? It is because most people do not understand its true nature. Failure is not your enemy. Failure is your teacher. It does not destroy, it refines, it sharpens, it strengthens. Failure strips away what doesn't work and reveals what does. Persistence is the price. The truth is this: success requires a price, and the currency is persistence. Every great man or woman who ever accomplished anything worthwhile walked through a hallway of failure before reaching the room of success. They failed and kept going, and they stumbled and stood again. They were rejected, doubted, ridiculed, and they still rose, because they understood something the average person does not. Temporary defeat is not permanent failure. It is merely a test of will, of desire, of belief. Those who pass the test move forward. Those who quit fail forever. Transmute failure into power if you are willing to look your failure in the face and ask it, "What are you here to teach me?" It will answer. It will show you your blind spots. It will reveal your weaknesses. And more importantly, it will point you toward the strength you didn't know you had. Every setback is a stepping stone, if you choose to use it as one. Every rejection is redirection, if you believe there's a better path ahead. There are no true failures in life, only feedback. There are no wasted efforts, only lessons learned. You have not failed unless you have failed to learn. So take your failures, write them down, study them, find the golden thread in every disappointment, and then transmute that pain into power. Failure is not the end. It's the beginning of something greater. It is not a sign that you should stop, but a signal that you are stretching beyond your limits. When you attempt something meaningful, challenging, or new, failure becomes inevitable. But here's the true thing. Failure is not a barrier, it is a bridge. It is not a dead end. It is a detour that leads you to a better path. Failure, when rightly understood, becomes the fuel that drives success. Many people are conditioned to view failure as something shameful, something to avoid, or worse, something that defines them. They think, I failed, so I must not be good enough. Or, this didn't work, so maybe I wasn't meant to succeed. This kind of thinking is not only wrong, it is dangerous. It convinces people to play small, to stop trying, to stay inside the comfort zone where nothing ever grows. The truth is, failure is not your enemy. It is one of your greatest allies, if you choose to use it as such. The reason failure can become fuel is because it carries energy, emotion, and experience, and all three can be transformed into power. When you fail at something, you gain insight into what doesn't work. You are forced to examine your approach, question your assumptions, and confront your weaknesses. That process, though uncomfortable, is invaluable. It is the forge where mental toughness, emotional intelligence, and wisdom are created. Success doesn't come from perfection. It comes from iteration. It comes from trying, failing, learning, adjusting, and trying again. Failure sharpens your skills. It humbles your ego. It demands that you become better. You don't succeed despite failure. You succeed because of it. The obstacle is not in the way. The obstacle is the way. When you begin to see failure as fuel, everything changes. The sting of defeat becomes a spark of determination. The disappointment of a loss becomes the foundation for a comeback. You stop fearing failure, and you start embracing it as a necessary part of the journey. Because failure is feedback, and feedback is information, and information is power. Look at anyone who has achieved something significant. An inventor, a leader, a creator, an entrepreneur, and you'll find a long trail of failures behind them. Not one or two. Dozens, sometimes hundreds. But what sets them apart is not talent or luck. It is the mindset that failure does not mean stop. It means adjust, evolve, persist. The reason so many people reach their potential is not because they fail. It's because they quit after failing. Imagine if you could take every failure you've ever experienced and use it as raw material. Like a fire uses wood to burn, you can use failure to ignite your purpose, strengthen your resolve, and increase your hunger to win. Each time you fall short, you build emotional endurance. Each setback toughens your skin, and each time you get back up, you become a stronger version of yourself. The greatest transformations don't happen in moments of comfort. They happen when you're face down in the dirt, questioning whether you have what it takes, and something inside you says, get up, try again. That voice, that decision, that moment, that is when failure becomes fuel. But this doesn't happen automatically. You must choose to view failure differently. You must retrain your mind to welcome challenge, to accept discomfort, to even invite setback, knowing they will forge something greater in you. That is the mindset of champions. That is the thinking of leaders. That is how ordinary people become extraordinary. So the next time you fail, and you will, don't shrink, don't retreat. Instead, lean into it. Study the failure. Ask yourself, what can I learn? How can I grow? What part of me is being tested right now? And most importantly, what's my next step forward? Because forward is the only direction that matters. Failure is part of the forward motion. It is not a weight to carry, but a force to channel. When you decide that failure will not break you, but build you, you take control of your future. You reclaim your power. You fuel your success. Remember, those who avoid failure also avoid greatness. And those who embrace failure learn from it and rise because of it. Those are the ones who go the farthest. Not because they never fell, but because every fall added fuel to the fire inside them. So, go ahead, fail, but do it boldly. Do it with intention. And most importantly, do it the mindset that every failure is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a better one. Failure is not the end. It's the beginning of something greater. It is not a sign that you should stop, but a signal that you are stretching beyond your limits. When you attempt something meaningful, challenging, or new, failure becomes inevitable. But here's the truth: failure is not a barrier. It is a bridge. It is not a dead end. It is a detour that leads you to a better path. Failure, when rightly understood, becomes the fuel that drives success. Many people are conditioned to view failure as something shameful, something to avoid, or worse, something that defines them. They think, I failed, so I must not be good enough. Or, this didn't work, so maybe I wasn't meant to succeed. This kind of thinking is not only wrong, it is dangerous. Convinces people to play small, to stop trying, to stay inside the comfort zone where nothing ever grows. The truth is, failure is not your enemy. It is one of your greatest allies, if you choose to use it as such. The reason failure can become fuel is because it carries energy, emotion, and experience. And all three can be transformed into power. When you fail at something, you gain insight into what doesn't work. You are forced to examine your approach, question your assumptions, and confront your weaknesses. That process, though uncomfortable, is invaluable. It is the forge where mental toughness, emotional intelligence, and wisdom are created. Success doesn't come from perfection. It comes from iteration. It comes from trying, failing, learning, adjusting, and trying again. Failure sharpens your skills. It humbles your ego, demands that you become better. You don't succeed despite failure. You succeed because of it. The obstacle is not in the way. The obstacle is the way. When you begin to see failure as fuel, everything changes. The sting of defeat becomes a spark of determination. The disappointment of a loss becomes the foundation for a comeback. And you stop fearing failure, and you start embracing it as a necessary part of the journey. Because failure is feedback, and feedback is information. And information is power. Look at anyone who has achieved something significant. An inventor, a leader, a creator, an entrepreneur. And you'll find a long trail of failures behind them. Not one or two, dozens, sometimes hundreds. But what sets them apart is not talent or luck. It is the mindset that failure does not mean stop. It means adjust, evolve, persist. The reason so many people never reach their potential is not because they fail. It's because they quit after failing. Imagine if you could take every failure you've ever experienced and use it as raw material. Like a fire uses wood to burn, you can use failure to ignite your purpose, strengthen your resolve, and increase your hunger to win. Each time you fall short, you build emotional endurance. Each setback toughens your skin, and each time you get back up, you become a stronger version of yourself. The greatest transformations don't happen in moments of comfort. They happen when you're face down in the dirt, questioning whether you have what it takes. And something inside you says, get up, try again. Voice that decision, that moment. That is when failure becomes fuel. But this doesn't happen automatically. You must choose to view failure differently. You must retrain your mind to welcome challenge, to accept discomfort, to even invite setbacks. A knowing they will forge something greater in you. That is the mindset of champions. That is the thinking of leaders. That is how ordinary people become extraordinary. Every failure contains within it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. This truth, simple on the surface, holds enormous power. It is not just a comforting idea. It is a principle rooted in the experiences of every great thinker, leader, and innovator in history. The problem is most people are never taught to look for that seed. Instead, we're conditioned to avoid failure, to be ashamed of it, and to associate it with loss, weakness, or even personal inadequacy. But the reality is far more empowering. Failure is not a wall, it is a door. And if you are willing to open it, you will find behind it the very insight or experience you needed to move forward in a stronger, smarter way. Failure does not arrive randomly. It comes to show you something. It may be that you were not prepared. It may be that your strategy was flawed. It may be that the timing wasn't right. But even in what seems like total loss, there is information, perspective, and depth being offered, if you're humble and open enough to accept it. Imagine someone who starts a business collapses after a year. On the surface, that looks like a disaster. Money lost, time gone, reputation perhaps damaged. But what if that person learned exactly how not to market a product? What if they realized how important customer service truly is? What if, during that failed year, they made connections with people who would later become partners in their next, more successful venture? The business failed, but the person gained insight, experience, and maturity. That seed of benefit was there all along, and it was only through failure that it could be discovered. This is how success actually works. It is not a straight line. It is a winding, unpredictable path paved with setbacks and disappointments. And at each point of apparent failure, there is a lesson meant to shape you into the person capable of handling future success. Without those tough lessons, you might reach success too early and be crushed by the weight of it. Failure, in that sense, can be a form of protection. It delays reward until you are truly ready to receive it with wisdom and strength. This is why failure must not be taken personally. It is never about your worth as a human being. It is about the gap between where you are now and you need to be to fulfill your potential. The seed of benefit is the bridge, and here is the most important parting. That seed doesn't grow on its own. You must nurture it. You must extract the lesson deliberately. It requires reflection, not regret. It demands that you ask powerful questions. What can I learn from this? Where did I fall short? What can I do differently next time? Who can I become because of this? And perhaps most importantly, you must believe that the benefit is there, because if you believe failure is only negative, you will never look for the gift it hides. But when you shift your mindset, when you train yourself to see failure not as something to escape, but something to study, you begin to develop a kind of superpower. You become emotionally resilient. You stop fearing failure because you know that even in your lowest moments, something valuable is being created within you. This is why many of the most successful people you know or admire have long lists of failures behind them. What sets them apart is not that they avoided failing. It's that they became masters at extracting value from it. They turned pain into perspective, rejection into redirection, defeat into determination. That is what the seed of benefit truly represents, not automatic success, but the raw material that, when cultivated, leads to growth. But this requires patience. Just as a seed does not sprout overnight, the value in failure does not always reveal itself immediately. Sometimes it takes time to understand what went wrong. Sometimes the benefit shows up in unexpected ways through new people, new directions, or new clarity. But if you hold on to the belief that nothing is wasted, that even failure serves you, then you will find yourself empowered in every situation, not discouraged by it. So the next time you fail, and you will, if you are truly striving for something meaningful, pause before reacting. Don't rush to label it as bad or final. Instead, ask, what is the seed here? What part of this pain can be turned into power? Where is the opportunity hiding? When you begin to live with this mindset, you become unstoppable, because no matter how many times you fall, you rise with more knowledge, more insight, more depth, and more strength. And over time, those seeds bloom into something greater than you imagined. That's not just success, that's transformation. So the next time you fail, and you will, don't shrink. Don't retreat. Instead, lean into it. Study the failure. Ask yourself, what can I learn? How can I grow? What part of me is being tested right now? And most importantly, what's my next step forward? Because forward is the only direction that matters. Failure is part of the forward motion. It is not a weight to carry, but a force to channel. When you decide that failure will not break you, build you, you take control of your future. You reclaim your power. You fuel your success. Remember, and those who avoid failure also avoid greatness, and those who embrace failure learn from it and rise because of it. Those are the ones who go the farthest, not because they never fell, but because every fall added fuel to the fire inside them. So, go ahead, fail. Do it boldly. Do it with intention. And most importantly, do it with the mindset that every failure is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a better one. Failure is not a final judgment, rather a powerful form of feedback. Too often, people interpret failure as a sign that they're not good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. They see it as proof that they should stop trying. But this view is not only disempowering, it's false. Failure is life's way of giving you data. It's the world holding up a mirror and saying, "This approach didn't work. Now what will you do with that information?" Every failed attempt, every rejection, every misstep contains a message. Those messages are not meant to shame or discourage you. They are meant to instruct you, to awaken your awareness, and to sharpen your strategy. Imagine a scientist working in a laboratory. They mix two chemicals expecting a specific reaction, but nothing happens. Is that failure? On the surface, yes. But in truth, it's feedback. The result tells them something valuable, that their current hypothesis needs revision. So they go back, adjust, try again. Eventually, through a series of failures, they arrive at a discovery. That same scientific approach applies to life. Every failure is an experiment in living. It's part of the process of becoming who you are meant to be. You are not expected to know everything at once, nor are you expected to succeed the first time. You are expected to observe, learn, and improve. That is how mastery is built, not through unbroken success, but through repeated refinement. When you begin to see failure as feedback, you strip it of its emotional weight. You no longer internalize it as a reflection of your identity. Instead, you view it as a response to your action, one that simply says, "Not this way. Try something else." In that light, failure becomes constructive, not destructive. Think of an athlete who loses a game. The loss hurts. It always does. But the smart athlete studies the tape. They look at every missed opportunity, every weak play, every lapse in focus. Why? Because within that loss lies the blueprint for their next victory. The failure, when studied, becomes the map. It points directly to where the improvement must happen. Life is much the same. Every time you fall short of a goal, you are being handed a unique opportunity to get better. But only if you are willing to ask yourself the hard questions: what did I miss? What can I do differently next time? What lesson is this failure trying to teach me? Sadly, most people avoid those questions. They are so consumed by the emotional sting of failure that they shut down. They retreat. They decide it's safer not to try again. But in doing so, they miss the lesson entirely. And by missing the lesson, they ensure the mistake will repeat itself in some future form. You see, failure does not disappear when you ignore it. It follows you quietly until you're willing to confront it and extract the truth it holds. If you are humble enough to listen, failure becomes your greatest teacher. Even the most successful people in history were once beginners who failed over and over again, but they didn't stop. They observed, they studied, they adjusted, and that is why they grew. That is why they became unstoppable. Consider how this applies to your life. Perhaps you've experienced failure in business, relationships, academics, or personal goals. Ask yourself, did you use that experience to grow? Did you treat the setback like a teacher, or did you treat it like a dead end? Because the truth is, the failure itself isn't what holds you back. It's your interpretation of the failure that makes the difference. If you see failure as an ending, you'll stop. But if you see it as feedback, you'll rise again, this time stronger and more equipped. So the next time you fall short, don't ask, "Why me?" Instead, ask, "What now? What can I learn? What can I improve? What does this teach me about myself, about the process, about what it really takes?" Because when you shift your thinking, you shift your results. Failure no longer breaks you. It builds you. It molds your thinking, sharpens your decisions, and fuels your persistence. You must train yourself to welcome feedback, even when it comes in the form of disappointment. In every no, there's a reason. In every loss, there's a lesson. In every mistake, there's meaning. If you are bold enough to seek it, when you make this mindset shift, you become unshakable. You are no longer dependent on constant success to feel worthy. You stop fearing failure because you understand it's just another form of progress. Remember, failure isn't falling down. It's refusing to get back up. And the one who gets back up with more insight than they had before is no longer failing. They are evolving. So listen to your failures. Learn from them. Let them guide you. Because feedback, even when it hurts, is a gift. And those who use it grow every time. Success is not sold in the marketplace of luck. It is earned, bought and paid for, with persistence. There is a price to every dream, and that price is the willingness to keep going when most people would stop. It's the decision to rise again when the world expects you to stay down. It's the unshakable mindset that says, "I will not be denied." Persistence is more than mere effort. Anyone can try once. Anyone can be excited for a moment. Anyone can start something new. But very few people are willing to push through repeated failure, long nights, setbacks, and uncertainty. Very few people are willing to fight for what they want and over again when the results are not immediate. That is why success is rare, because persistence is rare. Most people quit not because they lack talent, but because they lack endurance. They stop after the first rejection. They give up when the plan doesn't go perfectly. They interpret obstacles as signs to turn back instead of challenges to overcome. But history has never rewarded the quitter. It rewards the one who refuses to let go of their vision, even when the world calls them crazy. Imagine an inventor working tirelessly for years, testing hundreds of prototypes, each one failing. Imagine an entrepreneur launching a business, only to watch it crumble, then starting again. Imagine an author rejected by publisher after publisher, still writing, still revising, still believing. These aren't fantasies, they are real stories, and they all share one thing in common: persistence. The truth is that the path to success is paved with failure. Not just one failure, but many. Persistent people don't get fewer failures. They just respond to them differently. They don't see failure as defeat. They see it as data. They don't stop to dwell on the loss. They study it, extract the lesson, and move forward stronger. Persistence is also about patience. In a world addicted to instant gratification, but we expect results overnight. But real success takes time. It takes consistency. It takes daily effort, often in private, with no applause and no recognition, until suddenly there's a breakthrough. And that breakthrough, which the outside world calls luck or talent, is really just the visible tip of an iceberg built from relentless perseverance. There will be days when it feels like you're moving backwards, days when your work feels invisible, days when doubt creeps in, whispering that maybe you're not cut out for this. That is the very moment persistence must kick in. That is the test. Not when everything is going well, but when nothing is. That's when success is being shaped. That's when character is being forged. You see, persistence is a decision, not a feeling. It's easy to act when you feel motivated. It's harder when you don't. And that's when it matters most. Persistence is doing the right thing again and again, long after the emotion of excitement has faded. Trusting the process when there are no guarantees, only a vision and a will to see it through. Many people have goals. Many people have dreams. But what separates those who live them from those who leave them unfinished is one simple thing: the ability to keep going when it gets hard, to keep believing when no one else does, to keep showing up when it would be easier to give up. That doesn't mean you never rest. That doesn't mean you never pivot. Sometimes persistence means adjusting your strategy, refining your approach, learning from experience. But it never means quitting on your core purpose. It never means surrendering your dream to temporary pain. The road to success is often longer than expected. It rarely goes in a straight line, but those who make it understand that every delay is part of the preparation. Every obstacle is building their capacity. Every failure is shaping them into the kind of person who can handle success when it finally arrives. So if you're tired, keep going. If you've failed, learn and go again. If you're doubting, remind yourself why you started. Keep moving, keep believing, keep building. Persistence is not glamorous. It's often quiet. It's lonely. But it's the foundation of every real achievement in history. It's the thing that ordinary people use to accomplish extraordinary things. Success has a price. It's not comfort, not talent. It's not timing. The price is persistence. And if you are willing to pay it, fully, consistently, patiently, success will eventually be yours. Not because you were lucky, not because it was easy, but because you were one of the few who refused to quit. Many people confuse temporary defeat with permanent failure. They believe that a single setback, a bad result, a rejection, or a mistake means that they are not good enough, that their dream is unreachable, or worse, that they themselves are failures. This belief is one of the most dangerous ideas a person can entertain because it paralyzes action, weakens resolve, and kills potential before it has the chance to mature. The truth is, defeat is part of the process. It is not a signal to stop, but a signal to grow. Life doesn't hand you success wrapped in a silver box with a bow on top. It tests you. It challenges your will. It forces you to question how badly you want what you say you want. And that's exactly what temporary defeat is. A challenge, not a condemnation. Every person who has ever accomplished anything worthwhile has tasted defeat. Some have lost everything before they won anything. But the difference between those who rise and those who quit lies in their understanding of what defeat really means. The ones who rise know that a no today does not mean a never. They recognize that the world is not shutting them out. It's preparing them for the responsibility of handling greater opportunities. When you encounter temporary defeat, your emotions may flare up. You might feel embarrassed, angry, discouraged, or even humiliated. That's human. But what matters more than the emotion is the decision that follows it. Do you interpret the defeat as a message that says, "This is not for you"? Or do you interpret it as a message that says, "You're getting closer. Keep adjusting, keep refining, keep going"? If you study the lives of the world's most successful individuals, entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, inventors, you will see a common thread. Each one failed more than most people ever tried. They faced ridicule, rejection, bankruptcy, setbacks, and even betrayal. But they refused to accept defeat as their identity. They saw it for what it really was, a temporary condition, not a permanent label. Consider the person who wants to write a book. They draft their first manuscript and receive rejection letters from publishers. At that moment, they stand at a crossroads. They can say, "I'm not cut out for this," or they can say, "I just haven't found the right publisher yet." The first path leads to abandonment of a dream. The second leads to persistence, improvement, and ultimately success. Temporary defeat often contains the exact information you need to succeed, but only if you're willing to study it. What went wrong? What can I do differently? Where is the hidden lesson in this setback? That introspection, that reflection is what transforms defeat into instruction. Becomes a compass, not a cage. Moreover, defeat has a humbling effect. It strips away arrogance, it quiets the ego, and it teaches you to respect the process. It builds patience, it builds strength, and perhaps most importantly, it builds empathy, because when you've known the sting of failure, you become more human, more compassionate, more understanding of others on their journey. People often give up right before the breakthrough. That is the cruel irony of defeat. It always feels final when it happens, but often it's the very thing pushing you toward your breakthrough. One more step, one more attempt, one more strategy. That's all that stands between most people and their dream. But they stop short because they interpret a closed door as a locked one, instead of simply one that requires a different key. Success doesn't always come in a straight line. Often, it loops and twists. It takes you down before it lifts you up. And the reason is simple: success without struggle creates ego, not excellence. But success earned through trial and temporary defeat builds character, wisdom, and resilience. That kind of success lasts. So the next time you find yourself face to face with defeat, when your plans collapse, when people say no, when your effort doesn't seem to pay off, take a breath and remember this. What you're experiencing is not the end. It is not a signal that you're failing. It is a signpost on the journey. You're in the middle of the story, not the final page. And maybe, just maybe, you're one lesson away from the insight that will change everything. One adjustment away from unlocking the door. One act of faith away from rising again, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Defeat is only permanent if you let it be. Refuse to let a temporary moment define your long-term destiny. Stand up, brush off the dust, and keep moving forward, because the next step might be the one that leads you to everything you've ever dreamed of. Pain is an inevitable part of failure. It stings, it lingers, it echoes in our minds, replaying moments we wish we could undo. But what separates those who rise from those who remain defeated is what they do with that pain. Most people let it crush them. They let it confirm their worst fears. I'm not good enough. I'll never make it. Maybe this isn't meant for me. But the truth is, pain can either be a prison or a forge. One holds you back, the other remakes you. To transmute pain into power is to take the raw energy of failure, the disappointment, the embarrassment, the frustration, and refine it into motivation, focus, and resilience. It means feeling the sting of defeat but refusing to let it define you. It means saying, "Yes, I fell short, but now I know what not to do. Now I know what to fix. Now I know where I need to grow." Pain is information. It's one of the most honest teachers life offers. When we fail and it hurts, that's life drawing our attention to something important. Maybe a gap in preparation, a flaw in character, a moment where we hesitated when we should have acted boldly. Most people ignore that lesson. They bury the pain or run from it. But the successful take it apart. They study it. They ask questions. What did I miss? Where did I go wrong? How can I turn this into an advantage? If you want to convert pain into power, you must become a student of your own suffering, not a victim of it, because hidden within the discomfort is the blueprint for your next breakthrough. Every great invention, every powerful idea, every turning in history has come from a moment where someone experienced pain, and instead of collapsing, they used it. The Wright brothers failed hundreds of times. Each crash, each broken wing, each mechanical failure was painful, physically, emotionally, financially. But each failure also gave them the data to make the next attempt better. That pain became progress. You can apply the same principle in your life. The next time you fall short, don't waste time beating yourself up. Instead, harness the energy of that moment. Let it drive you to prepare harder, think deeper, act bolder. Let it become your reason to rise, not your excuse to stop. The anger you feel, channel it into discipline. The disappointment, turn it into laser focus. The fear, rewire it into courage. There is a fire inside every human being that is only lit through adversity. Comfort never created strength. Easy paths never forged warriors. Pain isn't pain is the crucible that's the merely interested from the truly committed. It tests your desire. It asks you, how bad do you want this? And your answer is not given in words. It's given in action. What you do after failure defines who you really are. Most people think power comes from confidence, talent, or luck. But real power, the kind that moves mountains and changes lives, comes from knowing that you've fallen before and gotten back up. It comes from scars that have healed into strength. It comes from surviving the worst and still choosing to move forward. That is power. And it is born from pain. When you experience failure, sit with it for a moment. Don't run. Don't distract yourself. Let it teach you. Let it humble you, but not humiliate you. Let it sharpen your focus, not shatter your spirit. Then, take what you've learned and get back up, not as the same person who fell, but as someone smarter, stronger, and more determined. This is how champions are made. Not in the glow of success, but in the dark, difficult moments where they refuse to give in. Pain, when embraced, becomes a form of clarity. It burns away illusion and excuses. It reveals the truth of who you are, and even more importantly, who you can become, when you choose to use that pain to transform it, to forge it into discipline, action, and perseverance. You become unstoppable. You are not here to be defeated. You are here to be refined. Every time life knocks you down, it is giving you a choosing remain on the ground or rise with fire in your eyes. The path of growth is paved with pain, but the pain is not a punishment. It is a preparation. So the next time failure visits you, welcome it like a coach. Let it point out what you missed. Let it expose your weaknesses. Let it challenge your ego. Then thank it and get to work. Because when you use pain as your fuel, failure can no longer stop you. It becomes part of your story, not as a tragedy, but as the turning point that awakened your greatness. You don't need to be afraid of failing. You need to be afraid of not using your failures. That is the only true waste. Everything else, every setback, every defeat, every misstep can be turned into power if you're willing. And the great news is you are. Growth does not come in moments of ease and certainty. It comes in struggle, in the face of adversity, when things fall apart, and when nothing seems to go according to plan. That is where real transformation begins. Most people misunderstand the nature of growth. They believe it's something gentle and gradual, something that happens naturally with time. But true, meaningful growth isn't passive. It's forged. It's earned. And it often shows up wearing the face of failure. Think about any time in your life when you experienced real growth. Not just superficial change, but deep personal expansion. Probably wasn't during a smooth, peaceful period. More likely it came after a fall, after a heartbreak, after a rejection, a defeat, a painful mistake. That's because growth requires something to push against. It demands resistance, just as muscles grow when they are pushed beyond their current limits. Torn down, and then rebuilt stronger, so does the mind, the character, and the human spirit. Struggle is the weight we lift to strengthen our resilience. Failure, then, is not a wall, but a workout. It is the repeated testing of your determination. The heavier the weight of the struggle, the greater the potential for growth. Now, here's the key distinctioning. Struggle alone does not produce growth. It's not enough to simply go through hard times. What matters is how you respond to the struggle. Some people break under pressure. Others are broken open and built anew. Growth happens only when you choose to lean into the challenge, to reflect, to adapt, to rise rather than retreat. It requires a conscious decision to learn, to persevere, and to continue even when the outcome is uncertain. Struggle refines your values. It clarifies what really matters. It strips away the illusions and excuses. When things are easy, it's tempting to drift, to get lazy, to take things for granted. But in hard times, you learn what you're made of. You find the truth of your priorities, your fears, your strengths. Struggle sharpens focus. It burns away the superficial and forces you to dig deeper. You become resourceful, creative, tough. And here's another powerful truth: struggle humbles you. It reminds you that you are not invincible, that success is not guaranteed, and that effort is essential. But it also reveals a strength you didn't know you had. You discover that you can survive what you thought would break you. You find new courage on the other side of fear. You find new clarity after confusion. You find new capacity in the rubble of your failed plans. In a world that glorifies comfort and convenience, we forget how valuable struggle truly is. We're taught to avoid it, to escape it, to numb ourselves when things get hard. But struggle is not something to be feared or avoided. It is something to be embraced. It is the chisel that sculpts character. It is the fire that purifies vision. It is the storm that reveals whether your foundation is strong or shaky. Think of the people who inspire you most, those who have made a difference, left a legacy, or achieved great things. None of them did it without pain. None of them succeeded without seasons of failure. Their greatness was not born from ease. It was born from how they handled the struggle. They chose to see every hardship as a step, not a stop. They chose to treat every failure as feedback, not defeat. When you look at your own life, remember this: the moments that feel most difficult, most frustrating, most hopeless, these are the very moments that hold the potential to change everything. But only if you engage with them, only if you decide to learn from them, only if you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" Every struggle is a test, not a test of how much pain you can take, but a test of how much you want to grow. It's a question life asks: or are you willing to endure temporary discomfort in exchange for permanent strength? You don't grow by wishing for an easier life. You grow by becoming stronger than the challenges you face. You grow when you choose effort over escape. You grow when you turn struggle into a stepping stone. And above all, you grow when you believe deeply and without question that every obstacle is an opportunity in disguise. So the next time you fail, the next time you fall, the next time you find yourself in the grip of a difficult moment, pause, breathe. And remember, this struggle is your invitation to rise. Say yes to it. Engage with it. Let it make you wiser, braver, and more unstoppable than ever before. Being a failure in itself does not define anyone. Everyone fails. Everyone makes mistakes, encounters setbacks, and faces rejection. That is not unique. What truly matters, what sets people apart, is how they respond to those failures. In every moment of defeat, there is a choosing to surrender to disappointment or to stand, regroup, and move forward with renewed strength. That choice is what defines a person's character, their destiny, and ultimately their success. You see, your response to failure is far more powerful than the failure itself. It is the internal narrative you write in the wake of a mistake that shapes your future. Do you tell yourself that you're not good enough, that it was never meant to be? Or do you say to yourself, "This is not the end. This is a lesson. I will rise again"? That story, that response becomes your reality. There are two kinds of people in the world when it comes to failure. The first sees it as confirmation of their limits. They stop trying. They become bitter. They give up on their dreams. They live small, safe, and stuck. The second type sees failure as a challenge to grow. They get back up. They change their approach. They come back stronger, wiser, and more focused. And in the end, they are the ones who achieve greatness, not because they never fell, but because they never stayed down. History is full of examples of individuals who failed, not once but repeatedly, only to eventually succeed in extraordinary ways because of how they responded. A young inventor tried over 1,000 times to create a light bulb before he succeeded. Imagine if he had stopped after the first 100 failures, or 500, or even 900. But he didn't, because to him each failure was a step forward, not a step back. He famously said he had not failed. He had simply found 1,000 ways that didn't work. That response, that mindset, is what turned his failures into the foundation of modern innovation. The same is true for athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, and leaders. What separates the world-class performers from the rest isn't just talent or luck. It is the refusal to be defined by a single moment of failure. It is the decision to rise every time they fall, to adapt, to evolve, to try again. But this principle isn't reserved for history books or famous people. It applies to you right now, in your life, whether you failed in school, in business, in relationships, or in personal goals. It doesn't have to be the end. The question is, how will you respond? Will you let this moment shrink you, or will you allow it to strengthen you? You must understand that failure is temporary, but the lessons you take from it are permanent. They become tools in your toolbox, weapons in your arsenal. Each time you fail and choose to rise, you develop something far more valuable than any quick success could offer. You develop resilience. And resilience is the engine of long-term success. When you fall, your instinct may be to retreat, to protect yourself from more disappointment. But true strength is found in facing that pain, sitting with it, learning from it, and then using it to fuel your next step. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action in the face of fear, especially the fear of failing again. Failure also humbles you. It reminds you that you are human, that growth is never linear, and that you're a work in progress. And that's a gift, because humility keeps you open to learning. It grounds you, teaches you that you don't have to be perfect, only willing. Willing to grow, willing to stretch, willing to fall and still say, "Let's try again." There will be moments when others doubt you. There may even be times when you doubt yourself. But in those moments, remember this: the only way failure can defeat you is if you give it permission. It is not an external force with the power to end your dreams. It is a test, a question being asked of you. How badly do you want this? Answer that question, not with words but with action. Let your response be louder than your circumstances. Let your comeback speak louder than your critics. Let your resilience become your reputation. Because in the end, success does not go to the one who never fails. It goes to the one who never gives up. So don't fear failure. Welcome it. Learn from it. Let it push you, refine you, and shape you into someone who doesn't just chase goals, but someone who earns them through grit, perseverance, and unshakable belief. And always remember this: you are not defined by your failures. You are defined by how you rise from them. That's the mark of a champion. That's the mindset of someone destined for greatness. And that can be you. You are not just going through TSO. As we come to the end of this message, remember this: failure is not your enemy. It is your instructor. It is not a wall, but a doorway. A doorway through which every great leader, creator, dreamer, and achiever has walked. Punishment. The difference between those who reach their dreams and those who never will is not found in talent, resources, or luck. It is found in the response to failure. You can either let failure weaken you, or you can let it forge you. You can allow it to write your ending, or you can use it to start a new chapter, stronger and wiser than before. If you failed, you're in good company, because that means you've tried. Now take what you've learned, use the pain as power, use the lesson as leverage, and rise with greater focus, deeper belief, and unwavering persistence. Let failure be your fuel, and when they ask you how you made it, you'll smile and say, "I failed, and I rose." Again and again, until I couldn't be denied. Thank you.